Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Fit Show Live Online. I hope you had a chance there to have a really good break, stretch your legs, get a cup of tea, and you are ready for our final session of the day, which is guaranteed to be a good one. We've got some great voices from across the industry, and we are going to be talking about one of the topics that is so important to all of us, wherever it is that we're working in fenestration. So one of the things, just to welcome anybody who hasn't been in any of our sessions previously today, we do want this to be as interactive as we possibly can. So I have some questions for our panelists, but I would love for you to get involved. So I'm going to keep prompting you to ask those questions. You can either do that by bobbing it in the chat box, or you can click on ask a question in the bottom bar and pop your question in there, and I will ask them to the panelists. If there's somebody specific you would like to ask, if you can put that in your note, that would be great. Otherwise, I will just direct it to whoever it seems most appropriate for. We are recording these sessions, but if you are a delegate, we can't see you at all. So don't worry about that. It's only the panelists who will be seen on video after this, and none of your voices or visuals will be seen or heard. So it'll just be us that you'll hear. So who have we got on today's panel? Well, we have, I'll run through them very quickly, but I'm sure they can also just do a quick intro to themselves when they get to answer their first question. But we have Joanne Taylor, and Joanne is MD of Fit for Trade. So been in and around the industry for about 35 years. I know doesn't look old enough, but been working on construction and various projects, but a huge passion for education, skills and training, and how we help bring in brilliant talent, make this an exciting and safe place for people to want to come and work, and then inspiring careers after that. We have Justin Ratcliffe, who's with us now. A lot of you may know Justin from his many years at the CAB. That's certainly where I first met Justin. But he's recently set up the newly founded Balustrade and Balcony Suppliers and Installers Association, for which he's CEO. So that's, again, we've been talking a little bit about diversification today and how we as businesses can look to go into other areas of the industry using the skills and the knowledge and the experience that we've got, but branch out a little bit and help hopefully appeal to homeowners and drive that spend up. But Justin is also a non-exec director of GQA. So welcome on board, Justin. And we also have Joshua Thompson. Joshua, I think, is someone who's really inspiring, really young guy. And at the age of 23, just 4 years ago, set up his own windows and doors company, Endeavour Windows and Doors, really well known up in my part of the world in the Northeast. And in the last 4 years has turned into a multi-million-pound business that is now working with and carrying over 20 installers. And Josh also has a number of other business interests in terms of finance and holiday lets. And every time I speak to him, he's like, oh, I've just started this company doing this as well. So when you talk about diversification, Josh is certainly the guy who knows all about that. But great to have some young talent in the industry who's going to talk to us about kind of his experience and how we get more people like him into fenestration. We will also be having Tracey Jackson joining us from Howells, who you will all know, I'm sure, quite well, being a BDM in the industry for years. And again, really passionate about recruiting and bringing new talent in. So Tracey was just having a little bit of an issue joining us, but I will get her involved in the conversation as soon as I possibly can. So let's start the debate. As I say, please put your questions in the chat box, because more than ever, we want to put your questions to the evening. So we talked a lot today about the pandemic and about how we're all faring after we've been through the 18 months. So Joanne, I'm going to come to you first. How do you think people in the fenestration industry are currently feeling after the last 18 months? So Joanne, over to you.
I think the industry in general is in a state of a bit of a panic at the moment. I think there's lots to look forward to. I think people are very busy, which is very good. I think they're concerned about, obviously, supply, the demand, the consumer demand. That's obviously a big issue at the moment with the waiting times. Furlough is obviously due to finish, so hopefully we will see some pick up there. But certainly with waiting times, a lot of the clients that I work with are booking now into, New Year and beyond. So I think that's the immediate threat. And as we know with this industry, there's always these peaks and troughs, compounded, I think, this time by obviously the pandemic. But I think looking forward, people are a lot more structured in their approach. Certainly a lot of our work throughout lockdown was much more bespoke consultancy on being ready for the emergence, for when we came back into the world after COVID. So I think optimistic, it's just whether or not we can continue to get the product.
I don't know if anybody else is getting that feedback or whether it's just me, but if anybody's got more than one tab open with the event on, if you could shut down any other tabs that you've got open with anything on. Perfect. I think it's gone. So, Josh, tell me how you and your team are feeling after the last 18 months that you've been through.
Well, to be honest, it's been really bizarre. For anyone who can say they feel like, any way, shape, or form comfortable, it's just not right. It's been very difficult because even though it's been very nice to be so busy and have this influx and drive of business, but at the moment, it's still all virtual business because it's hard to fulfill all the orders that you've had. So the mindset of everyone around there, it's great. When things, obviously, I know it's been a terrible time, but when everyone's not going on holiday and people are placing so many orders, you think, oh, well, this is the best thing that could have ever happened to like mine and my business partner's business. But obviously, trying to fulfill them orders, it's great taking them. And then 15 weeks down the line, out of nowhere, there's glass shortages and door shortages. It's been really interesting, but it has been stressful. But I think if you're very straight with the people you deal with, it is what it is. Sort of, mindset is probably the best way to look at it. But it's been tough, and I think it's still going to stay like that for a good while. But it has been very, very bizarre to say the least.
Yeah, and it's that kind of frustration and you need to dig deep for that resilience to keep going when you can see the order book filling up, but then that the delays are coming in on stuff and you're having to have those difficult conversations with homeowners. It's like, just got to kind of keep going at a time when people want to spend money, but it's difficult sometimes to kind of meet the expectations of, well, why can't I have my windows next week? And, having that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually had to try and scale down slightly, which I think quite a lot of glass companies have done as well, just so that it's nice to always be topping a work pile and workload up, but the pile was getting so big that you're thinking, well, we could be like a year's worth. Our installers, it was just completely strange. Just people were signing contracts and it was all great, and then suddenly you've got this. It starts to scare you. You think, well, this could start now damaging the business. So it's really been really hard, but honestly, it's been scary, exciting, and bizarre, and a whole sort of strange mix.
Yeah, and you haven't got quite as many years behind you as the rest of us in terms of finding that, or some of us, should I say, that experience to keep you going. But brilliant.
Yeah,
Justin, over to you. Just looking at, you obviously set up a new trade organisation during this time, so really, really brave move. But how are you and your network feeling at the moment?
Well, thank you, Nicola. Yeah, I think the comments that have been made to date are, a very Joanne's made a very good point. I think Josh has as well. It has been a bizarre time. We've had the mix of issues in terms of demand, price rises, but we've also had that balanced out by some very, very high order books and enormous positivity, and that's been very much the case in the balustrading and balcony sector. There's been phenomenal positivity, and I think that's been post pandemic. I think that's been a very pleasant, I'd say, surprise for people, but it's given them.
I'm just going to flick off Justin's microphone there for 2 seconds because we're getting some terrible feedback. So I don't know if you're I've got any other tabs open on your laptop at all, Justin. That's sometimes why we get that. But do you want to try speaking again, see if we've resolved that?
Yeah, I will. Sorry.
No, we've still got you.
Do you want to pass on me, Nicola?
Yeah. So Justin, what sometimes might help is if you log out and log back in and just make sure you're on Chrome, and then we should be okay there. See if that works for you. So we have got a couple of questions. So Joanne, I'm going to come back to you first off, and we've got a question from Martin Sadler here, and Martin's asking, what do you think would be the one main action to take to make people excited about joining the fenestration industry? So what do you think would be the one main action we could take to make people excited about joining the fenestration industry?
I think the industry is very visual, so we need to make everything visual. It's a visual product, so therefore we need to make the people within it visual. There's a lot of familiar faces that I see on a day-to-day basis and events like this. It would be nice to actually have installers. Obviously, I know Josh runs his company, but by having that physical presence and actually the making people aware of what is actually contained within the industry and the vast range of opportunities within the industry would certainly help. So I've sort of given two there, but I think both are quite important, that we've got that visual element of what an installer is, or what a surveyor is, or what somebody in IT, or someone in obviously fabrication, so that people can actually see that these people are real and they're actually doing that job. So video content and actually putting that out there so that people can see these are real people doing real jobs and with real experience and how they got there. So that would be
absolutely. And I think that's one of the great points, Joanne, is that it feels, fenestration feels quite a long way from a lot of people. They know that they get the windows installed, but they don't really know how to get a job doing that. Is it a good job? Is it well paid? How hard is it? You know, the visibility of actually the trade perhaps isn't always there. So as you say, that kind of content about bringing it more alive to people of what the job actually in the industry actually entails. But Josh, what about you? What do you think? You know, you're relatively young and been in the industry a while. What more can we do to get more young people excited about joining fenestration?
Well, do you know what? This is a question that I ask myself all the time. It's something that just doesn't go away. So I would say the biggest thing is opportunity in so many diverse roles. So I think opportunity creates itself whenever you get the right candidate. So if you've got someone who's pretty, you know, who's just a good candidate in general, you know, it's, if someone came to me and said, "Oh, I'm the best surveyor in the world and I'm young," we'd create room. Now, I think the window industry is one of them sort of industries where people just create gaps. Even if you haven't got room for that position, if you've got someone who can be great at that role, you just make yourself that little bit busier. You know, it's like if the best window fitting team walked in tomorrow, we would just make sure that we had a position for them. And I don't think there's many industries where you can just go, right, well, you're pretty good, you're pretty well suited, let's just get you out on the road. Whereas I think a lot of people, especially in my position, where you're scared of missing the best people in the industry and you think, well, they're not going to come again, or, you know, because there is so few and far between. You know, like some of our youngest installers are 33 years old. I'm the youngest person at our business. It's frightening. You know, me and my business partner, he's 30, I'm 27. It's like, it's completely strange that you can't get someone young in, and, you know, it happens. So I ask myself this question every day, and I don't think there's an answer, but the opportunity is so widely spread, and, you know, gaps can just create anywhere for the right person. So I'm surprised there isn't a lot more people in it.
And interesting, just picking up on that point, Josh, how at 23 did you get into the fenestration industry? Was that a choice that you made? You thought, oh, I want to be in windows and doors. How did you end up here?
No, absolutely not. I got sacked. I tried to be a joiner, and it just never ever worked out. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I didn't like the cold. You know, I couldn't pick the hammer up in November. So I just thought, oh, this is not for me. I'm okay at talking. I'll have a go at being a window salesman. And then, long story short, I ended up in a call center making appointments for people that used to go out and sit the leads and, you know, generate the leads. And I was pretty good at it, to be honest. So that's why my sort of career in the window industry, I really wanted to be the man who was out doing the deals and not just making the appointments. And it grew pretty quickly, you know, and it just shows, you know, in the space of, I've only been in the industry probably 7 or 8 years. And, you know, we are from making appointments for guys to go and sit leads for someone else to then being sat in the big chair making the big decisions. You know, it's quite a short period of time, but, you know, you learn fast, and it just shows you that it is. You can accelerate through this industry as long as you're committed to it and you're passionate about it. And that's the biggest thing for me. You know, I absolutely love every single day of the week. So,
yeah, perfect. I think we've just got Justin joining us again. Then he's just sorting out his camera and he's fine. And it's a really interesting story, you know, that you've got, Josh. We've spoken at length in the past about kind of how do we harness some of that kind of passion and enthusiasm you had and that tenacity to just get in and have a go and, you know, make the most of it and do make the best business that you could out of it and take some risks and some big decisions. And if only we could get more young people interested in that early on. But we've another question here that I'm just going to ask as well. So what advice, this is from John Ogilvie, so thanks, John, for this. What advice would you give companies who say they are too busy to train their staff at their moment? Oh, good. So not just retention, this is very much a conversation about how do we keep talent and how do we keep training people in the industry. So Justin, welcome back. Great to have you. I'll put you on the spot straight away, seems though you're back. What would you say to companies who say they are too busy right now to be training their staff?
I don't think it's an alternative. I don't think it's a valid excuse. I think what we've seen is during the pandemic, I think we've seen a great increase in blended learning. I think there are a lot of creative ways around issues of time. And I mean, talking to a number of companies during the lockdown, Nicola, I think one of the interesting areas was the fact that they managed to see that by doing online courses that they had maybe offered once or twice, they found they could actually be a lot more efficient than in face-to-face courses. And in fact, necessity made them increase those efficiencies. So maybe in terms of being able to do maybe only one or two people on a particular training course or undertake one or two training courses, they could do 5 or 6 online in a day. So there were efficiencies all around. So I think that is a poor excuse. We've also seen lots of opportunities going forward with the new apprenticeship program. There's a wealth of opportunities to offer people, and I think without stealing your thunder, there are so many opportunities in different forms of training as well. I think we tend to be rather narrow focused in our sector, and if you look at automotive engineering and other areas, more developed training structures, we can learn a lot from other sectors in terms of the variety and the scope of training that's offered. So I think just saying there isn't time is very narrow-minded and sadly reflects probably the historical view of training in our sector.
Yeah, Joanne, coming to you, I know you're incredibly passionate about training and training people up, and have done some of that kind of wider looking at other industries to see the best practice and what we can bring into fenestration. And so what would your kind of comments and thoughts be to organisations who, at the moment, they have got some really difficult demands on their time, on the demands on the time of their people? Kind of, what's your thoughts on taking that time out to train?
I think there's a saying, isn't there? You use what you have or you lose, and I think never has that statement been more important, really. The fact that we had seen a big shift with people having problems with retention, furlough scheme, people deciding not to come back into industry, moving on, retiring. We know we've got an ageing workforce in this particular sector. I think it comes back to, this is not a problem just because of COVID or Brexit or whatever. This is a problem that's been around for a very, very long time. I think we're not alone. The whole of the construction industry has become very, very complacent in their approach. We talk about fits and starts, whether it be political led or whatever. The whole I'm too busy. I would say 90% of our work during lockdown was, as I said, bespoke consultancy of getting people ready and what they needed to do, because a lot of these people were on furlough, sat at home, and actually those companies that invested in that time and the money have actually probably come back into this a lot more prepared. So there's never going to be a good time. So always look at a strategy. And if you don't know how to put a strategy together to focus on that, speak to somebody that can help you. There's a lot of people in this industry, and we are like a big family. Whilst we are obviously in business, there's a lot of people that will provide a lot of guidance and mentoring to actually help that process, and coaching to help that process, which doesn't necessarily have to cost an arm and a leg. And a lot of it's free advice and guidance. We're all in this together. So, it's about taking that step.
And just interesting coming to you, Josh, thinking about kind of your organisation, because you were saying, you are one of the youngest in your business. How do your sort of installers and your team, how do they feel when you talk to them about training? Is that actually something that they're up for, but you can't get it? Is it that they don't actually want any training or don't see the benefits of it? What's the conversations you're having around training with your team?
I think it depends on what sort of team you speak to. Everyone is different, and everyone has a different opinion on, how they would like to train someone. What I have found, certainly this is one side that my business partner does more than I do, but when you start to mention, trainees to your staff, it's like, oh, well, what's in it for them sort of thing. But one thing I will tell you is that every single good window fitter out there that I've spoke to, if there's another good one out there, they all love how they tell you that they trained him, and they absolutely love that, and it's like as if they've always got one over on these guys. There's a guy that works for us, he's like 68, he's brilliant window fitter, fantastic, just loves going to work. But all he does is tell everyone about who he's trained and why he's trained them from other companies, and he wouldn't be there if it wasn't for him, and just the general gossip. So I think we've got one of our first training installers. He's 33 years old, which is brilliant. He came out the army and stuff like that. So and he's gone with this guy, which is great. But it's a tough one because from when you're at my side, when you want to see, obviously you need to see the money coming in as well, and you obviously want people trained up. It's a time thing. And sometimes when it depends where people's businesses are. If you're looking to grow that business and you're at the very start, sometimes you have got to balance it. So you've got to do it, but you've got to accept that these things don't just happen overnight. It's a time thing.
And sometimes on that, do we forget how much training can happen on the job? Sometimes we talk about training and people automatically think, I've got to go in a course, I've got to go sit in a classroom for the day, it's time off the tools. But actually, we shouldn't lose the value of that. As you said, Josh, the guy training up your new installers coming in and that working and that experience, but just formalizing a little bit to say, you are being trained so people recognize they're getting that while they're on the tools and doing the job. It doesn't always have to be in a classroom, maybe just
absolutely.
Go on, Josh.
Yeah, one thing I would say is when people obviously are training, especially with a labour intensive job, it does get stressful, and you don't just get it straight away. It takes hours and hours of swinging a hammer and all the rest of it. So it can be frustrating for people. So I can see why a lot of people don't do it, because a lot of people will go and do a labour intensive job and just think, am I just a labourer? Am I getting anywhere? And you've got to keep reminding these people that, there is light at the end of the tunnel and there's more to it than that, But I think it's very easy to forget when you are just doing the labour intensive jobs to start with and cleaning masks and stuff like that. It's very easy to forget that, people just think, am I just cheap labour here? When it's not, it's a lot bigger picture, and it's a long journey from start to finish.
Yeah.
To master your craft. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing? I think it's also about identification of the right people. So we're talking about attainment, and it's about understanding the people that you've already got and their strengths and what they can bring. Anything can be derived around an individual when we talk about training, but it's about understanding those individual strengths and gaps, and what that person's willing to do in order to get there. We can compose a program that's suitable, whether it be online, whether it be face to face, whether it be on the tools. But you've got to understand what that preferred learning style and what that person is actually able to do. Just because they're a good fitter doesn't mean they're going to make a good supervisor, manager, leader, surveyor, whatever. It's about recognising that opportunity as well. So a lot of what we do is we go into organisations, we actually have that conversation at ground level. We know what the aims and objectives are of the business, but actually people forget about the people that are actually working within that business. What do they want to achieve? And again, it's about widening that mindset of, it's not just about the here and now. Where do you want to be and how can we get you there? So that's part of it. And that's the biggest part, I would say, of recognising that talent.
And that's, that succession planning of looking at, who have we got in the organisation? How does this future-proof us? Where are we going to have gaps? Where do I think people are going to move through? So that, exactly as you say, John, putting the appropriate training in.
If I could just come in there, Nicola, if I may. I think Joanne's made a very good point there. And I think what we fail to do in construction is that we fail to set out career paths. We fail to set out the opportunities that exist, and we fail to say, look, there's probably 70 or 80 identifiable different roles potentially in our sector. If you take every possible single role from marketing, CAD design, when we're promoting this in the past historically, and some companies have improved massively in recent years on this, but when we've done this as a sector, we've basically given young people and their parents, who are very influential, the idea that all they're going to be doing is fabricating or installing windows. What we've not managed to do is successfully put across the whole raft of skill sets that can be useful in our industry, and also the opportunity of where individuals might be able to get to with some of those skill sets within, say, 5 to 10 years. And maybe that university, yes, is an option, but there are other opportunities. And the one thing that, if I may just add, is that, salary progression is so important to young people these days. And yet, if you see the reality of what salary progression in our sector would be, you wonder why, as an industry, we haven't promoted that better.
Yeah.
In my last organisation and the current organisation, the Balustrade and Balcony Suppliers Association, we have got some fantastic examples of people who set out as a mere apprentice, shop floor, installer and whatever, and now have run their own multi-million-pound company. Why are we not getting some of those case studies? Why are we not promoting that? But they have developed skill sets, and they've worked in an arena which has allowed them to progress and given them the confidence and the skill set to progress at that time. So setting out a career progression and offering and highlighting the different skill sets that are valuable to make a career in fenestration, I feel is so valuable. Thank you.
And just picking up on that point that you made, Justin, just to bring in a question from David Borland that is asked. So you talked about university may or may not be the right option for people. Well, David's asking, did any of you panelists see the GGF apprenticeship scheme that launched last week? And what are your feelings on the initiative? So, Josh, I'll come to you first. Is the GGF apprenticeship scheme anything that you're aware of, and what are your thoughts on it?
As in for aware, no, but as in for apprenticeship schemes, always been very, very interested. Something that me and my partner discuss all the time. With it, we have gone down avenues to look for apprentices, but like you said, it's just getting the right person, the right candidate, and it's a hard vetting process, because what you don't want to do is put the right person in the wrong position, which is so that, yeah, very interested, but the right candidate for the right area of the business. Yes, obviously throughout the industry, everyone's been struggling for fitters, so we have been looking for apprentice fitters, but also internal office staff to deal with the finance and the accounts. There's loads of positions that we are interested in filling, yes, and it is something we actively look for, yeah, but obviously the right candidate is the most important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think that Martin, thanks for your comment there. You've just said it's important to choose the right people in the company who deliver the mentor or training to the right level of skill, and that can be the difficulty with apprenticeships, is have you got the right people to help support them. But Joanne, how aware are you of the GGF apprentice scheme that launched last week, and your thoughts on it?
Whilst I'm not here to pass any comment or judgment on particular schemes that are out there, because there are a lot, it is a very, very complex part of what we do as an industry. Obviously, I've been in apprenticeships and the training sector for a number of years. It is very, very complex. There's a lot of auditing processes. There's obviously a lot of inspection processes that you go through, which has got funding attached. So you need to be mindful of that as an organisation if you are joining an apprenticeship scheme, and what funding is available via the government, and that it's an approved apprenticeship scheme via the ESFA funding organisation, as well as Ofsted. So I'm not going to pick on any particular one, but we know that apprenticeship standards over the years have obviously taken a completely different look, and I've seen a number of changes. It's got much more with employers in mind, of actually how we structure that to each individual industry and each particular part of the sector. So I think that's a strength. I think there's a lot more choice available for people. But again, it's still about coming back to, have we got the right people? And when we talk about training, just picking up on what Martin said, it is paramount to have the right people. I wouldn't be in the job that I am and run the company that I do if I didn't have that expertise. And there is a fine line between coaching, mentoring, and delivering training and approved qualifications and apprenticeships. There is a standard that we are all regulated by, that we have to maintain. So that's quite important, that if you are having anyone that's going to be mentoring, shadowing, that they need to go through the right processes as well to understand what is required of that role.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in kind of picking up on that point, answering the question in part, you know, in how much you know about the scheme and your feelings for it, but also how well do you think some of these apprenticeship schemes are known by the organisations that they're targeted at to actually take on apprenticeships?
I think it's a very interesting question. I mean, I think if you look at it at a base level, apprenticeships have been around since about the 1800s, and you know they do have a proven success record. And I know there are people who are pro and con them, but pro and against them. But I think that if you look at the way somebody asked me the other day to try and describe, you know, the new apprenticeship standards, they said, well, how do you sort of, you know, describe it? And they said, well, I said, well, if you look at it a bit like sort of a driving test where you have continuous training and then you have a third party test at the end, an independent test. Now, I know that's not an exact science, but it gives somebody an idea. And I think this, rather than sort of continuous assessment, I do think that having this sort of, continuous training and then an end of training assessment, you know, works well. In terms of how well they are known, yes, I think there's a bit, you know, more marketing needs to be done. But I think that if you look at, I was involved in the curtain walling trailblazer for the curtain walling industry, and it is frightening how few, I think, or relatively few apprenticeship standards there are, in our sector, when you compare to other sectors. And I think that's something that, you know, we need to look at going forward. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work still to be done, but getting that, communicating the benefits of the new apprenticeship standards going forward, I think is very important.
Thank you for that, Justin. And just kind of picking up on that, so apprenticeships aimed not exclusively, but largely at kind of younger school leavers at that demographic. And we've got Steph from Building Our Skills. Thanks, Steph, for coming online and asking a question, saying, I'd be interested to know what the panelists' views are on the greatest barriers to entry for young and new people, and what ideas do they have to address them? So not just necessarily getting young people in, but any people into fenestration. What are the barriers to people accessing this industry, and how do we overcome them? So Josh, coming to you, what's stopping people coming into this industry?
I honestly don't think there's a lot, if I'm honest. I don't think the barrier is very high. I think there's plenty of opportunity there. I think it's just really picking the phone up, making the call, getting yourself in front of the people that you need to be in front of. I think that's the main thing. Start the conversation. I think that's probably the only barrier. You know, everyone's got that little skill that they're good at or they're not good at. And the fit, I think you can place virtually anyone at some place in a glazing business, you know, wherever there's so much wide scale to be at. So that as for barriers, personally, I don't say that there's massive amounts, because there's a place for absolutely every part in the business, I think. So it's probably a nice thing, a nice barrier not to have, really.
And I think that's why it's so interesting to have you on a panel, because there's probably loads of people saying, oh, it's all about like accessibility and perception and salary, and perhaps those of us that have been around a little bit longer will be saying, oh, there's loads and loads. But it's great to hear you say, do you know what, just pick up the phone and have a conversation. If you want to be in the industry, just ring somebody and be part of the industry, because we'd welcome anybody. So it's really refreshing to get that completely different side of the perspective that we usually get. Joanne, over to you. Sorry, go on, Josh. You finish your point. Sorry.
Yeah, well, a good example is we have a girl that works for us called Natalie. She's absolutely brilliant, but she had absolutely no knowledge of the window industry at all. And it's like over the period of 2 years, we rely on her so much now, you know, from someone who hasn't had any experience, who was just working in your normal sort of admin job. So she came to us as an admin. Now she runs the place. You know, it's frightening to see how much we rely on her. You know, you can look at someone who has never been in the industry, for us to be so dependent on that person, you know, pricing jobs, doing all sorts, just molded into this glazing, you know, she's brilliant, from absolutely no experience. So that's why I think the barrier is so low, because people do mold, and when you are in this industry, you just learn about every part of everyone else's job. You know, it's just naturally everyone forms together, and, you know, it just comes together. So you have so much knowledge. And like I say, we're so dependent on someone that's been with us for 2 years, and it's great.
And it's interesting whether if you'd said to her 2 years ago, do you want to really make your career in the fenestration industry, where they should have just looked at you and gone, I don't even know what that is. You know, it's that kind of, Martin's made the point, you know, it's lack of awareness. Who knows what fenestration is unless you're actually working in the windows and doors industry. So, John, I can see you nodding your head along there. So what do you think the barriers are? Why are we people not coming into this industry?
I completely agree with Josh. There's never been a better time. And I am going to go back because I'm a lot older than Josh, and I was given the options at school that basically you go to be a nurse, you become a hairdresser, or you go into secretarial. And I said, I really don't want to do any of that. I wasn't given the option. I think I'd done one term of woodwork because we had to do, you know, home economics, which is cooking. But we weren't given the options. Nowadays, completely different. The options are there. So the barriers are actually not in place, but it's what the perception of those barriers are within these young people. So I do something, I work with the Careers Enterprise Trust, and if Tracey was with us, she'd say exactly the same thing. She does a lot of work within schools like myself. And I go into school and I have two hats. I've actually done one session where I come out and I'm managing director of Fit for Trade, a training organisation, and they see what they perceive to be a professional person standing in front of them talking about the industry sector. They'll have a break. I'll come back dressed in my site wear as I would when I'm fitting, because funny enough, I do still, as part of a couple, I do actually still turn my hand to fitting, installing various products. And funnily enough, people don't actually realise it's the same person until they just think, who's that person sort of standing there in the background? And I actually say, well, actually, this is the other half of what I do. And that's when that opens that debate and that talk about, hold on a minute, you just come out dressed like this. What do you actually do? And then I actually sort of show them some of the product and what we do and how we communicate with the other opportunities, how we talk to, you know, management, production, IT, sales and marketing. But all the time we're showing the different stages of the product. And actually, I say, by the time you get to meet Joanne Taylor, Managing Director of Fit for Trade, we're actually at this stage. And then they get it. So there's the barriers are, again, somebody I think made the point about parents, you know, parents, media, you know, they're all influences. Yeah. But actually, a lot of the youngsters have actually got their own perceptions built in of what they can and can't do, or the awareness. And that is obviously paramount. It's the awareness of what we can do. So the more we can get out there and obviously spread that word, the better.
I think Joe, you made a very good point. I particularly like Joshua's example, and I think of Joe. What a great example, and what a great case study to take forward. People fall into our industry, and that has always been the problem, the perception. We've never managed to get across that actually we work in quite a high-tech industry. If you look at the machinery involved, if you look at the CAD systems, and look at the technology that's coming forward, and we don't get that across. We do have apprenticeships, but if you look at colleges and you look at the courses they have, you know, such as everything from, you know, in construction, plumbing, carpentry, you know, where does fenestration fit in? Is it recognized as having the same kudos, as having the same earning potential, as the same development? And even when you get construction courses, is fenestration case studies, are they used? Are students who actually go into study construction at college, do they actually come out feeling, actually, I'd like to specialize, I'd like to go into the fenestration sector, because that's one with a lot of opportunity. And I think, you know, John Ogilvie makes a very good point there, that, you know, parents are hugely influential in this as well. And I think we have to have more belief in ourselves as a sector. We have to get across the career paths, which I talked about earlier. We have to highlight the benefits of the new apprenticeship standards. But more importantly, we have to see how other more traditional sectors, and I go as far as the automotive sector in car mechanics, look at the number of training courses, look at the perception, look at the perceived value almost in society that those roles and careers have. We have to fight very hard to get fenestration seen as a high profile, high quality career with good career progression and good incremental salary increases as well. Because if we can, we will attract more people like Joe to come in at a level knowing that if they've got ability, if they work hard, if they take on board the opportunities that already exist, those opportunities are out there, they can make a huge progression, far more so than maybe going to university. And we need to redress the balance, and I think that's the challenge. I think if I can just add one very quick last point, and that is about having the opportunities on a national basis for training centres. And if you will, if I may, I'll just mention the fact that GQA have been able to not only open a new regional centre in Sheffield, but have now got access to centres in Cornwall and Hayes in Middlesex. And I just use that as an example of making sure that we don't use geography as a reason for people not to be able to be trained. And I think that is a step in the right direction. But some really good points. And I think, the one point I'm going to take out in the morning is that example, the case study of Joe that Joshua used, because what a great example to take out of this session.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Justin. And I'm just going to bring Tracey in. As you know, Tracey was hoping to join us from Howells and has tried on 4 or 5 different devices for us to try and get in, and just keeps getting a hardware error message. But Tracey, we are missing you. Thank you so much for putting your comments. And she has just texted me. So I'm going to read out Tracey's comments because I think it's really important we hear her voice as well, because she was so keen to be involved. So Tracey says parents have an important part to play in encouraging children picking the right career. My family supported me through my career, and this has enabled me to learn every aspect of the company, as well on taking new education and growing as a person. Fenestration is a career of choice, and the only way to promote this is by elevating the movers and shakers and showing by example it is for everyone in the industry. So thank you, Tracey. I'm sure I've not done that comment justice, but it's definitely worth including. I know we've got another couple of questions then. I'm just going to let this conversation run a little bit. So we were going till 4:15. I'll let it go a little bit longer because we started slightly late. I understand if people have to leave, you have to leave. That's no problem. Josh, just slightly controversially want to ask you a question around when you set up your own business. Was that around a love for fenestration, or was it about wanting to be an entrepreneur and having your own business?
That's a good question. I'm glad you've asked that. So when me and my partner, we both worked at other companies, and honestly, there's so many companies out there that aren't run very well, aren't run very professional, and we just thought, these people are dinosaurs, there's better ways to do this. I've always loved being in selling things, windows, doors, always absolutely loved meeting people, which is great. But as you start taking it more serious, as into being your own business, and you think, well, is this a step for us? It's you start looking at the mechanics and the actual brand. So we've always wanted to really cement a good quality brand in our area, because so many places that we worked, we learned how not to do it, because these people were only interested in the money that was coming in and not where the brand was going. So for us, even where we were at, it was a good job, it was a good living, but the people who had the business weren't really focused on their brand. And I think now, because of social media and things like that, your brand is so important. Without a brand, you're not going to get that far. So I think in the last 10 years, with the internet being obviously is what it is and social media, everyone's brand has improved. So when we first set up, we knew that this brand had to be the absolute best of the best for it to be successful and not just be like any other glazing business. So, but yeah, we've always loved the glazing industry, but obviously to take the step to do it on your own, it's a completely different ball game, and you want to protect that brand so much. Any little comment on social media or anything, it really does narc you, late at night or whatever, or my door's dropped and the engineer hasn't come for 30 minutes, or he's 10 minutes late. That sort of stuff you take to bed with you. So you really do have a passion for it. So yeah, we do love what we do.
And I remember one of the first conversations we had, Joshua, when I first met you, and I'd kind of seen Endeavour around the area where we live. And you turned up in your little smart car, and you're quite a big guy to be driving around in a branded up smart car. But you said, there's no way anybody who works for me is going to a house to do a quote for a job and going in some flash car. They'll go in a smart car, because what does that say about my business if there's a really expensive 60, 70 grand car sitting on the drive and you're trying to sell me windows? People are automatically going to think that I'm just paying for that car, whereas in a smart car, it gives a different perception. And it was for me, it was like, oh, actually, that's a really simple thing, but it just seemed quite authentic the first time that we sort of met and had that conversation. So.
Yeah, there is big stigmas with people driving flash cars and, and saying snotty comments, and, and that's why the industry is being so, it's created such a gap for people like us who want to do it differently, and just go out and literally we aren't going to sit in your house all afternoon. We just simply don't have the time. We've got, so after you, as lovely as you might be, we've got somewhere else to measure and someone else who wants to buy, so sitting here talking about how nice your dog is not for us. You know where I'm coming from.
But we're delighted that we've got Nikki West on the conversation this afternoon. So I know she's hugely invested in the industry. And Nikki, lovely to have your really positive comment to say, can we please have this panel's help in driving young people to visit Fit Show? It's such a brilliant platform to see the sector and the opportunities. So yes, all of you, please, whatever you can do to help us to drive some more young people to come and hear about all the opportunities for them would be brilliant. So let's not lose that in the next few months before the show. So we've talked a lot about, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions before we round up, and I'll just check I've captured all the ones in the Q&A. We've talked about how we attract young people. We've also talked a little bit about retention. We're coming out of the pandemic. We know that people have been through a really, really difficult time. Some have been on furlough, some have lost their businesses, some have had to retrain as other things. What do you think the priorities are for the skills agenda over the next 18 months to 2 years? So, Justin, I'm going to come to you first. What are those big priorities for skills for us in the industry for the next 2 years?
I think there's a number, and I think between the three of us, we can probably cover them. But I think it's incredibly important, and I know that Steph has just put up the point about building our skills going into schools. For those who aren't aware of what Building Skills is a national campaign, completely independent, and the opportunity is there for anybody in the industry to join Building Our Skills, become part of it, and become an ambassador for the industry by going into schools. And I think just one element of addressing the issue with young people about showing an element of excitement, about ambition, and maybe dispelling some of the myths about everything that fenestration isn't at a young age is probably really important. And I would urge anybody who's listening, who's passionate about our sector, to use the vehicle of Building Our Skills, and anybody can become part of it and take that message out into schools. So I'm grateful for Steph actually raising that. I think on the side of things, I think I would go back to the issue of career progression, and we need to inspire talent. To retain talent, we need to aspire talent. And we don't, it's not just about money, but it's also about recognition. And if we go back to the lovely example of Jo, she got the recognition for the ability that she was showing, and an employer was able to pass, promote, and fast track her. But it is showing a progression the way forward. It is showing that career path. It is identifying that we are trying to attract talent in, and we have to compete with young people who would otherwise be going into what their parents may consider more traditional trades, such as automotive engineering, carpentry, or plumbing. And to do so, we have to show a progression. We have to show a planning. We have to show a plan. And I would say, likewise, to any company, look at your own planning, look at your own training program, I'm saying, internally. And go to the various organizations that are around, including GQA, and Building Our Skills, and discuss those training programs, because that is the way we're going to go forward. We aren't competing amongst ourselves here. We're competing with other sectors of construction. So rather than say this company or this organization is better than the other, it's not about that. This is a fundamental review of saying we as a sector are competing against other trades for a talent, to attract them in the first place, and then secondly, to retain them. So those would be my 2 or 3 points.
Perfect. Thanks, Justin. And I'm just going to read out Tracey's comment in case anybody misses it. But we talked about kind of going into schools and what we can do. And it's difficult getting into schools at the moment, obviously, because of where we are with COVID, etc. But Tracey's saying T levels are aimed at college-age students, and this will show them that fenestration has lots to offer. It's not just about getting your hands dirty in the manufacturing factory, but finance, sales. And that's something that we've really talked about a huge amount at Fit Show previously. the breadth of careers that are available, the digital media, social media, digital marketing, comms, HR, design, production, there's a whole remit of any sector that has a wide scope of opportunities and careers. We've got that in fenestration. So we've just got to make that more widely available. Pick the job that you want to do, and it will probably exist in fenestration somewhere. It's just, as Josh said, going and finding it. So Joanne, over to you. What do you think the big kind of priority over the next 18 months, 2 years for skills?
Picking up on obviously what Justin said, I think there's one word that I want to say, which is what the industry will probably recognise, and that's the word competition. We do competition in this industry in a big way, negatively and positively. So let's focus on the word competition, because that's the difference between you having a business in the next 5 to 10 years, 20 years, and that sustainability. And it was only last week, I had the joys of going to Scarborough for a couple of days. And when I hear that a cleaner for a B&B is earning £15 an hour, and in my area, we've got fabricators that are earning like £9.80 an hour, and these same people are saying, I can't get anyone. Well, that's a pretty good example. To have that agreed between ourselves within the industry that we've got this career progression from start all the way through of them salary increments, because believe me, there are so many people that think we don't earn hardly anything or it all goes elsewhere. It's honestly, it's absolutely shocking what the disparity in pay structures that are being set, and people are worried about, the retainment of industry. Of course, somebody is going to go elsewhere because money is a driver. It might be a short-term driver, but at the moment, we know some people are really, really struggling. So, people do need to know what those paths are. What am I going to start on? What are you going to train me? Where am I going to progress to? I don't think people should be afraid to. I see far too many adverts for jobs that do not publish a salary. Let's not be ashamed. Let's start regulating this and saying, if we want decent people and we want to attract talent, let's pay them. Let's pay them the right starting salaries, because there's a lot of initiatives, and I know building our skills are key drivers in this, certainly within the military. These people that are coming out of the military have got some brilliant transferable skills. They're not going to be starting on £9, £10, £11 an hour. They've got families to feed, so come on, let's not be greedy. Let's invest in our people and have sustainability for all our businesses.
Thanks, Jo. Really passionate comments from you there. You can just, I think that's the beauty of this industry as well, is that we have people that really care about the industry, who've invested an awful lot over the years in experience and time spent. So Josh, over to you. Slightly different position for you in your business, but from a skills perspective, what are the things that are going to really help your business grow and develop from a skills perspective over the next few years?
So I think it's a lot of it is going to be we need a little bit of luck with the right people to find us. So if the right people find us, would be great. As in for skills, we could, as a business owner, we'd love to have the lads who are out there who've just finished a joinery apprenticeship, that think, hang on a minute, I'm on the bench in this and I'm making staircases and I hate I hate this, and I want to go out and chase a bit more money, and I really want to better myself, and they're the sort of guys that we want. So I went through a stage of advertising for skilled window installers. We give up on that like 15 months ago and just started asking for joiners, and suddenly, as soon as you're asking for joiners, there's things coming from all over. So I think for young, skilled, men, women, wherever it would be, whether it be in accounts or admin or whether it's installations, the right person, we will find a place to help our business grow. As long as we have that good talent, we will just find somewhere for you. And that is what drives all businesses, because people mold so well in this industry, like I said previously.
And did you get some of those joiners that you recruited then, and are they doing a good job for you?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we've got a couple of teams that have come on board, which has been great. You know, I've never ever been so excited to see a 25-year-old man fit 2 windows before. But you know, I was on the phone. How's it gone? You know, because it's people. To be honest, it was great to hear when I got the phone call back saying, mate, it was just 2 plastic windows, you know, and that's great because these are really skilled people that deserve to be earning good money. So, you know, the fact that he ran back and went, yeah, 2 windows, that's fine, they're in, like, next one, you know, that's brilliant, you know, because that guy there has got so many skills, being sat making staircases on far less money, you know, and it's nice to be able to pay someone more money. Like, we love that. That is it's a massive drive for us to see young people, because everyone wants to have a few quid in the pocket, and you know, and when you see people who are paid, you know, by the frame or bonus per frame or whatever, it just makes people want to work that bit harder, stay a little bit later, and you know, and collectively we all grow together.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that story where you were so proud of him, and he's just like, "Wow, it was just 2 windows." So, you know, it's,
2 windows.
it's yeah, and brilliant to see. You know, maybe we should not be hung up, as you say, on the must be skilled window fitters. Actually, just find people with the right skills who've got a bit of experience in trades and transfer it. Yeah. Maybe we don't do enough of that. So Tracey, I can see you've commented again, just saying we are in unprecedented times and we need to look to the future and get the right people around us now. Hopefully with furlough ending, this will be what is needed to start the employment market moving again. So, and Tracey says, we're always looking for transferable skills. Yes, absolutely. You know, if you've got the right attitude more than anything and the right skills, then they could be applied to anywhere in the fenestration industry at all. So I am conscious it's 4:30 and I have kept you all over time, but which I do really appreciate. Thank you so much, Tracey. I'm so sorry we couldn't get you live with us. Hopefully we've done some of your comments justice, but you will be first on my list for Fit Show 2022 to get you on the stage so that we can hear you loud and proud. Please don't be sorry. It's the technology that's let us down on this one. But Joanne, Justin, Joshua, thank you so much for giving up your time and chatting about skills. It's been great to hear all your opinions. And Martin, yes, that is that very famous quote that says, would you rather train people and they leave or not train people and they stay? So it all comes back down to that. Yeah, what if we train them and they go? What if we don't train them and they stay? So that is it for that session on skills. We could talk absolutely all day about it. Hopefully it's given you some inspiration. We know there's huge challenges, but there's so much positivity from these guys and all around us in the industry about how we retain people, how we attract new talent. The will is there, the passion and the desire is there. So we all just need to harness it and get out there and shout about how brilliant this industry is. So thank you, guys. I will say goodbye to you now, and we will hopefully see you live on stage at Fit Show 2022.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to close these guys down and say to our delegates that are still left that most of you have been with us all day. So thank you so much. It has been absolutely brilliant to see you. I'm just going to wrap up very, very quickly for today. We've had a whole range of sessions from building your business, where we had Elton talking about working more efficiently. We had David Glenwright talking to you about how you can use LinkedIn more efficiently. We then had Risa come and talk to us about changes to building regulations, which Lee himself said, I'm so sorry, this is a little bit dry, but really, really important technical information. We had Paul opening up this morning, who was talking around kind of where the industry is now, some of the challenges that we know you're all facing. We had a brilliant chat with Carissa over lunch just to get her perspective on the industry being a fairly new recruit and what she's thinking, but also hopefully give you some hints and tips about how you generate your own PR. And we had Renson talking about the brilliant opportunities that we've all now got in outdoor, should you wish to diversify. And I think I've covered everybody there. But thank you to all of our speakers. We know it takes a lot to come online and develop those presentations, talk to an audience. So we really, really appreciate all of your help. Thank you to all of you for joining us. We are back tomorrow at 10 o'clock with Elton again, who's going to be talking about how you make sure you don't lose those hot leads. We're also talking about mental wellness in the construction industry, something that's really important after the last 18 months we've all been through. We've got a smart tech panel. We're also looking at innovation and we're looking at Instagram as well with David Glenwright again. And Liz Clark will be sending us a video again from a regulation perspective. So a packed agenda tomorrow. We're live from 10 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Have a great evening.